This is the Sound of Freedom live on the Orion Talk Radio Network. I'm your host, Ryan Brooks. Folks, make sure you check out the Information Nation with Ken every Sunday night from 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Ken Hildebrand takes a good hard look at the news that the newsmakers soon learn to regret. Ken calls them the way he sees them, and folks, sometimes it isn't pretty. So tune into the Information Nation with Ken Sunday nights from 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time, exclusively on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Just another incredible host who will tell you things that the mainstream media will not. Once again, I'm Ryan Brooks. We have our special guest today, my good friend Matthew Hayward. Now, I know, Matthew, you're discussing some things in the chat room. By the way, folks, if you want to get involved in the discussion, just go to Orion Talk Radio, go to chat, and you can find the Sound of Freedom chat room. It's filling up. We've got Matthew is in there, but it looks like you're kind of getting in a little bit of a discussion with some of the listeners, as far as some of the listeners think voting is completely worthless at this point. And I know you wanted to address some of the things. Go ahead.
Just one thing, Ryan. I wrote a blog quite a while back called Just One's Vote, and I'll kind of look at a few things, but just the overall thing I want to make clear to people is, if all you're doing is voting, that just shows your apathy, your level of lack of concern. If all you're willing to do is vote for somebody, you really don't care. You don't really support that candidate. You don't really want to get involved. You don't really care. I mean, whether you vote or not is not a big deal. It doesn't really matter much. If you really care, you get involved. You put your time, your energy, your blood, your sweat, and your treasure toward the cause, toward the candidate, toward your beliefs. That shows you count. So I don't believe that your one vote matters. That's why I vote with more than my ballot. There are many ways to increase our influence and to create votes. When I talk to people who are 16, 17 that say, well, I can't vote, or a felon, he says, well, I can't vote. And it's like, big deal. Your vote means nothing. Your ability to influence 1,000 votes is incredibly more important than your casting your ballot. I don't care if you don't even make it home to get to your ballot, to mail it. If you're out there working your butt off to get people motivated and inspired and educated and out, and they're voting, because you can create thousands and thousands of votes. You can raise millions of dollars. You can do all sorts of things. We have an incredible ability and capacity to educate and influence others, and that is 1,000 times more important than your vote at the end of the day. And again, the Electoral College, I just want to make one more comment on that. People who say, why get involved when we have the Electoral College choosing the president? Well, one of the things I used to ask those people is, have you ever thought about being an elector? Because that always follows up with like kind of a, what? Oh, how do you do that? And I don't do it in a rude way, but it just highlights their ignorance. One of my friends is an elector here in Washington State. It's not going to make any difference because Washington State is not a swing state. Democrats are going to win the state. And so the electors that were chosen by the Democrats at their state convention are going to be the electors that go to Washington. But if for some reason, somehow, the Republican Party won the nomination in Washington, there would be a few electors that would go and cast their electoral vote for Ron Paul because they're not bound. But again, it just shows that people just don't understand. And there's a whole list of things that I've got. Be a candidate.
Hey, let me interject real quick here.
Go ahead.
Because, yes, I agree with you in the regard that, you know what, even if you can't vote, you have the ability to influence hundreds, thousands. You can write, you can speak, you can get involved in so many different ways. But what I was kind of touching on in the last segment is about like how far gone our system is. And what I'm saying is like Obama, his campaign has raised his campaign has raised $1 billion. Our country has, what is it, like 3.5 million homeless people? And the president, just to win, has to raise $1 billion. I mean, there's something seriously wrong with the system itself, is there not?
Oh, I agree. In fact, I tell people, don't worry about federal politics, except if you were planning on writing Ron Paul in, I would urge you to please not do that, and instead consider voting third party. Specifically, I would promote Gary Johnson, regardless of whether you like Gary Johnson or not. It would promote the third party going into the 2016, potentially getting federal funding, which, regardless of the money aspect, would make a news story, which again, ultimately the whole point of this is breaking the left-right paradigm. It is breaking into people's thinking. It's trying to get people to critically think and to, look at things differently. I think that is my overall goal. I don't even care if somebody's a socialist or Green Party. I think they should vote for Gary Johnson. And I said the same thing before with people voting for Nader. Anything to break the two-party stranglehold, the one-party monopoly, and the corporatism. So I think that it's a matter of full-spectrum dominance. Whatever your strength is, go out and educate people and influence and teach people and go about it whatever way is good for you. But that's the only thing I would say federally. People who believe it's too late, one of the questions I pose is, what if it's not? What if it's not? What if you quit and you gave up, and in 4 years, where our country is still here and our standard of living has only decreased slightly, and on and on and on. People said when Bush in 2004, if Bush is reelected, this is it. And you go back, you listen to Alex Jones, you listen to a lot of the folks who got really into the liberty movement. This has been being said for a long time. Now, I don't disagree that I think that we're going to have some sort of economic collapse and that we're going to have a massive, massive shift. I can't say what's going to happen or how bad it's going to be, but I can tell you that our actions today are going to directly reflect how bad it is tomorrow. And I try not to let the fear of tomorrow interfere with the integrity of my actions today. And
right.
I believe that
I understand what you're saying. Go ahead. Finish up. Go ahead.
We need to get involved and build for a better future. We need to build for tomorrow. We need to build our communities. We need to grow our own gardens. We need to become as sustainable as we can on our own and become less and less dependent on the government, on the stores, on the other things.
Now, here's where I'm going with this, Matthew, okay? My belief is that, obviously we do agree, and I know a lot of the listeners who tune into Orion understand that we are facing economic collapse of proportions that the world has never seen. And I'm not trying to fearmonger or scare anyone, but the facts are the facts, folks. No country in the history of the world has had as much debt as the United States of America. No time in history have so many countries depended on a fiat currency that is ready to go. But what I'm getting at is this shift, like you're saying, Matthew. I feel like we're so far gone socially, emotionally, physically, spiritually. I mean, in every sense of the word, the masses, our people are so brainwashed and obsessed with consumerism and so many dirty things that there's no way to break a lot of these people, like the movie The Matrix. They don't want to be unplugged, and they will not be unplugged until the collapse. And by trying to get involved in politics, I can understand as far as, having a platform to try to educate some, but even in the political spectrum, there's millions of people who don't even pay attention to it at all, who are serving this system, whether they know it or not. I feel like it's more effective to do what you were just saying. Grow gardens, know your neighbors, start a community, have, close family ties, opt out of the dollar the best you possibly can. Every single dollar you spend, try to make sure it's to a worthy cause. Don't buy GMO, things like that. I mean, would you agree with me when I say that almost every system they use to enslave us is through our own consent? What do you think about that?
I essentially agree. But Ryan, I have 2 gardens, and I have those gardens because I heard Ron Paul.
Fair enough. All right. Well, folks, the break's coming in. This is the short segment. We still have a couple of more segments with Matthew Hayward. To vote or not to vote, to get involved politically or to walk away, aggressive resistance or just let a dead dog die. I mean, it can go on forever. It's great stuff. Sound of Freedom, Orion Talk Radio. Don't touch that dial.